A Dictionary of Ukrainian Emotions.
Hello, my name is John Friedman. I am pleased once again to welcome you to our podcast series of new Ukrainian texts. It is called A Dictionary of Ukrainian Emotions. If this is your first time with us, let me say a little bit about this project, which is presented by Ukrainska Pravda, Ukraine's most popular internet portal. Over a series of 9 podcasts, we are offering readings and discussions of 9 works by 9 authors, all of whom are members of the Theater of Playwrights in Kyiv, and all of whom wrote texts for an English-language anthology called A Dictionary of Emotions in a Time of War, 20 short works by Ukrainian playwrights. This award-winning collection was compiled and edited by yours truly and published in 2023 by the small but mighty Laertes Press in the United States. Every text in the book was written in 2022 in response to the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine. The text chosen for today's podcast is a subtle and sensitive monologue titled Planting an Apple Tree by Iryna Harets. Iryna is a prominent writer, theater maker, and social activist in Ukraine. In fact, she wears many professional hats, including those of playwright, prose writer, screenwriter, theater director, children's author, and psychologist. She is a founding member of 2 major internet portals, Ukrainian Drama Hub and Ukrainian Library of Modern Drama. She's also a founding member of the July Honey annual drama competition and the Theater of Playwrights in Kyiv. She is one of the organizers of our Dictionary of Ukrainian Emotions podcast. Iryna graduated from the State Pedagogical University in Poltava, Ukraine, and currently lives in Lviv. She has written over a dozen plays, many of which have won awards in various play competitions. She is a founding member of the Theater of Contemporary Dialogue in Poltava, where children and youths encounter the reality of today's world via drama and theater. She has helped create educational theater venues all over Ukraine, including in the cities of Popasna, Bakhmut, Severodonetsk, Lysychansk, Ivano-Frankivsk, Poltava, and Lviv. Our reader of Planting an Apple Tree today is Kathleen Chalfant, an accomplished American actress of stage and screen. She has over 90 credits as a performer in film and television, and was a member of the original 1993 Broadway cast of Tony Kushner's legendary American history play, Angels in America. She won a prestigious Obie Award in 1999 for her work in Wit, an off-Broadway production of Margaret Edson's Pulitzer Prize-winning play. She was a winner of the Freedom of Expression Award at the Cine Euphoria Festival in Portugal in 2020, and she has been described by the Rotten Tomatoes film website as an incredibly well-respected and versatile actress. No small praise from that notoriously bad-tempered website. Following Kathleen's reading of Iryna Harets' Planting an Apple Tree, please stay tuned to hear Kathleen's and my discussion of her approach and response to Iryna's work.
A Dictionary of Ukrainian Emotions.
Planting an Apple Tree, Iryna Harets. Dwarf breeds of apple trees. They take up less space and they match my height. They bloom and smell wonderful in the spring when I can approach them and smell their blossoms without climbing up on a ladder. In the fall, I will collect their sweet fruits. Sources on the internet say the trees will bear fruit in the 3rd year after the seedlings are planted. I'll wait. The main thing is to talk with my neighbor. He has a tractor and we have abandoned, overgrown land. We recently bought a house with land in a village. We threw all our efforts into remodeling the house, but never touched the land. We spent a long time thinking about what would grow here. The distance between trees should be 3 meters, and the depth of the planting hole 70 centimeters. Can you imagine, says my husband? They're just children playing war. We stand calmly on this starry night and suddenly hear sirens, an air raid alarm. Drones, drones, men shouted and began running to their cars all over the village. I say, people, those are stars, twinkling stars. The boys correct me. Drones, drones, they're moving. I found an article on Wikipedia for them about the twinkling of stars, and I dropped it in the general chat of the Territorial Defense. We'll see what they write now. My husband laughs and hands me a phone with the chat open in Viber, where the men from Territorial Defense check their duty time, their team, and share the news. In fact, I'm ashamed to go to our neighbor and ask point blank, will you plow our land? Of course I'll pay you. Those who sold us the house, the former owner said you always helped, please help us. I didn't dare, even when my 3-year-old granddaughter and I saw him as we passed by his hut and tractor. I just said, hello. People greet each other in this village with such affection. Children say happiness and health instead of hello or good afternoon. Adults say, God grant you health. I still say good afternoon or good evening. But I will learn. My Varya and I were out for a walk, and we came upon a neighbor, said hello, and encountered a worm, a long, fat one crawling across the road. My granddaughter decided it was in danger because cars were driving past, and we watched for almost an hour as the worm slowly squirmed along, and we asked cars to go around it. Finally, the worm got to the other side of the road and climbed under a leaf. Varya happily continued our walk. She's very smart for her age. She is capable of saying marvelous things. Where is your mommy? She asks me. She died, I answer. Then who's going to hug you and pity you? Then she said she remembered what it was like to be dead. Varya says she was dead. She couldn't move her legs and arms, and she saw nothing. I don't cry. No tears flow. I just feel a fierce anger. My imagination paints a picture of a cluster bomb flying into the high-rise building where my children live and killing my son-in-law, daughter, my Varya, and my little Orchik, who is less than a year old. Discard the top layer of soil separately, then mix the soil with peat and humus. Then add to the mixture some superphosphate and wood ash. Hammer a peg into the middle of the hole, then add the soil mixture. Over that, sprinkle earth from the topsoil. Place a seedling in the center of the hole and separate its roots. It is very important that the roots do not touch the fertilizer, for it can burn the tree's delicate roots. And my husband says, rumors reached his soldiers that a party of Russians had landed. There was general excitement as plans were made to neutralize them. Then came the realization that they did not even have guns. They began thinking about what to do. I offered to stick a pitchfork upside down in the ground pointing upwards. Let the assholes plant themselves on that. I will come to you on a tank, says my uncle from Moscow. You are fascists and Nazis. You must be destroyed. Oh, yes, Uncle Sasha. Women with babies in the maternity ward in Mariupol are your greatest enemy. You have destroyed the heart of fascism and Nazism in our country. And the grandmothers who sit in the basements of Oktirka, and the small children you killed, and people with disabilities who do not have access to medicine. I don't cry. They say it's easier when tears flow, even more useful. We have a quiet region. Sirens ring out periodically, but we haven't been bombed yet. I even feel guilty that my sister is being bombed in Kharkiv, and my family is being bombed in Kyiv. I try not to think about the many places where people are on the verge of a humanitarian catastrophe, without water, food, medicine, and where children die of dehydration. I take in refugees almost every day, tired people with frightened eyes. A 5-year-old boy asked to watch cartoons. He sat quietly, watching. Suddenly, the cartoon's music imitated the sound of a siren, and the child dashed and scrambled under the bed. "Mommy," he cried plaintively. Later, there were many other such children and adults. I do not have time to air out the bed. I never finish the process of cooking. I am running out of internal resources. Fatigue. I don't cry. No tears flow. After planting it in the ground, you tamp down the soil around the seedling, and at a distance of 1/2 meter from the trunk, you build a ridge around it 15 centimeters high. In the resulting depression, you pour in 25 to 30 liters of water. I'm ashamed to admit it, but on the first day of the war, I had diarrhea and was sick to my stomach. I thought I'd been poisoned by something. I thought if a bomb flew into the house, I would die awkwardly, pants down on the toilet, a silly death. The days go by like years. It seems like a peaceful life is something distant and unattainable, but I have an abundance of patience and anger. I also have an abundant supply of pills that I cannot live without. If they run out, I will die a nasty death over a period of 3 months. The internet says I eventually will just fall asleep. At least I'll finally get some sleep. I don't want to cause problems that might make my relatives worry. I do not want to be a weak link, a burden, if our city is surrounded. I do not know how people live with my diagnosis and without pills when surrounded by an enemy. Be patient, my dears. Be patient. We will win. I try not to think about those who need insulin. Their situation is much worse than mine. They don't have 3 months left. Since the root system in this kind of apple tree clings to the surface, today again, diarrhea and nausea. I just want to vomit. But what about the apple trees? Aha! We must not let the roots dry out. Constant watering and mulching. I need to note everything down in writing. That will be my witness when I forget. My nephew in Moscow, 5-year-old Andryusha, stayed with his nanny, found a portrait of Putin, took scissors, cut it into small pieces, and said, "Die, scum!" The nanny was frightened, scolded his parents, and warned him not to do that in kindergarten. One needs love and humanity in these days of rage and hatred. My youngest daughter is pregnant and terribly frightened. She called to tell me there was an air raid alarm, and because she was on the street and did not know where to hide, my arms and legs began to tremble. But it's no big deal, I repeat to myself constantly. It's nothing. You must wait, struggle, and suffer the pain. It's like giving birth. Then you look at the baby and think, wow, good for me, I did it. We will cope. I want to balance anger with love and tenderness. My pregnant Dasha picked up a little mutt named Bun at the shelter. Bun entertains my child and relieves some of the anxiety. My husband and I also picked up a dog, Squirrel. We love our little one, although, to be honest, she looks like a little bat. Most important, the formerly homeless Bun and Squirrel are full of love for us. You need balance. My grandmother, who is half Tatar, was supposed to inherit a huge apple orchard from her Tatar grandparents, but she didn't. First, the Soviet government took away the apple orchard and destroyed the trees. Second, even if she had managed to inherit it, she would not have been allowed to do anything, acquire a profession, or earn a living. I think, could it be my fault that the war started? Maybe my thoughts about the new apple orchard reflected some absolutely evil universe, a kind of Mordor that rejects everyone who loves, creates, and generates something, that destroys for centuries anything that is capable of creating happiness and giving life. When watering the apple tree, take care with the supports under the fruit-laden branches.
A Dictionary of Ukrainian Emotions.
Hello, today I have Kathleen Chalfant with me. Kathleen did a marvelous reading of Iryna Harets' piece, Planting an Apple Tree, and we will get to that in a minute, but I would like to talk to Kathleen shortly, at least briefly at least, about some of the work she has done. And I must say that one of the things that impressed me terribly, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, is that Kathleen was in the original cast of Tony Kushner's Angels in America on Broadway. And that is a landmark in American theater, and I think we can say a landmark in world theater. So you were there right at the beginning of that, Kathleen. Can you talk about that a little bit, please?
I was there pretty close to the beginning. The play was originally commissioned by a theater in San Francisco, but at the time that Tony was working on it in California, he was also working on it in New York, and I was part of the New York cohort. So I first heard about the play from Tony in the spring of 1988. My husband and Henry and I were taking a walk on the Upper West Side and ran into Tony, and Tony said, I've written a play and I've got a part for you in it. And that was nice. And I said, oh, cool. And then I heard nothing more about it until October of 1988, when I was in Larry Kramer's play, Just Say No. It was in the sort of low point of the Dukakis campaign. And so our play, in which I played Nancy Reagan as a nymphomaniac, was a kind of gathering place for Democrats in despair. But at some point, I think we'd opened already. Tony asked me to come and do this reading in an afternoon, and I was late. And so I was handed the play, and he said, I want you to read the Rabbi, the Doctor, Ethel Rosenberg, and the Mormon Mother. And the very first, I had the very first lines in the play, which were from the Rebbe Isidor Hemmelwitz from the Bronx Home for Aged Hebrews. And the Rebbe came out of my Easter and Christmas Episcopalian mouth just like that. And it was only a few years later that I realized that the Rebbe inside me was based on Mr. Kitzel from the Jack Benny show, which I used to watch listen to when I was a little kid on the radio. Oh.
So what you're trying to say is if you watch television when you're young, it's going to stick there and it's going to come back and help you out sometime, hopefully help you out in the future.
It will. Even more the radio, which is where I heard Mr. Kitzel. So in any case, I was involved then with Angels from 1988 until Ellen McLaughlin and I, who were the last two original cast members, left the Broadway production in 1994.
And I do want to say, for people that might not know American politics really well, that Michael Dukakis was a candidate for president from Massachusetts in 1988. And he had a lot of great support, not only from people in theater, because his sister was one of the great American actresses. And so theater people loved the Dukakis family, but also from us liberals like myself. And I worked very hard to help elect Michael Dukakis, and we got beat terribly at the ballot box. So American politics is a dangerous thing. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. That's a scary thing to say in 2024. I also want to point out that you won a whole slew of awards for performing in a Pulitzer Prize winning play called Wit. by Margaret Edson. And I don't know that play, but what this is telling me now, you're talking about Larry Kramer's play, Tony Kushner, you performed in Tony Kushner, you performed in Margaret Edson's play. You've done a lot of contemporary texts, apparently, yes?
I have. I didn't actually go to drama school. So, in fact, I have a degree in classical Greek.
Huh.
But I never wanted to do anything but be an actor. However, because I didn't go to drama school, I didn't do the canon or any part of the canon until quite late in my life. I came to New York when I was 28 and began to study with Wynne Handman, and right away began to do new work. And so most of what I've done in the theater has been new work.
Uh-huh. That's fascinating. Of course, American theater is largely built on new work. That is a focus of American theater. Not so much in Eastern Europe, although I will say, because of the horrible consequences of the war, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, there has been an extraordinary flourishing of writing for theater by Ukrainian writers, playwrights. So this project that we're involved in, this podcast that we're doing, is we are highlighting the writings of 9 writers from a theater called the Theater of Playwrights in Kiev. And Iryna Harets is one of those writers. She's a founding member of the theater. And I was looking at the piece a little bit earlier today, and it's such a subtle, beautiful piece that just wants to calm you down all the time, as it talks about how you go about planting an apple tree and caring for it, and how many, inches you need to do this and how many you need of that, and how you need to water it. And then she'll come in and I think there's 4 times in the piece where she says, I don't cry. I don't cry. I try not to cry. I don't cry. No tears flow. I just feel a fierce anger. And then she goes back to talking about keeping the trees. She's trying to keep her sanity, isn't she?
Yes, she's trying to keep her sanity. And she's walking with her granddaughter, Varya, who has survived, it seems, has survived an attack in Kiev. Because her granddaughter, Varya, says one of the things that makes her very angry is when her granddaughter, Varya, says, I know what it's like to be dead. I was dead.
Right.
And the notion that a tiny child should have that kind of knowledge is horrifying not only to the narrator of the story, but should be to all of us. We're living in such violent times.
Yeah.
I was particularly drawn to this piece of writing because I'm a gardener too. And the idea of trying to establish, to keep yourself grounded by growing things is very important to me. And I think that the Iryna Harets has captured that feeling, the way the miracle of growth, which is that if you put a seed in the dirt and put water on it and add sun, you get apples, is a miracle. And we feel that very much here. And also when she talks about her Tatar grandmother's apple trees having been destroyed in an earlier invasion of a people's land, it seems to be a thing that people do to Carthagize the land that they invade, to make it, to sow the land with salt. And so planting apple trees.
Kathleen, have you ever worked with a text like this? I mean, that is like this timely, that is written about some incredible, important event that is happening right literally this very moment. Was this a new experience for you? Was it something that you can compare to?
No, I do quite a lot of, or have been lucky enough to have been asked to do a fair amount of political work and reading political texts. So this is something that I'm familiar with, and I was very moved to be asked to help in this particular circumstance.
Yes, I pulled out a quote about you that you apparently made, in which you believe that theater is a platform for social change. And of course, this is when we're talking about a nation fighting a war for its very existence. That's not merely social change. That's a lot more than just social change. But you can't get any more timely than that. I do want to point out that when you listen to a piece like Harets' piece, Planting an Apple Tree, she is pushing back in this incredibly subtle, understated piece. She is pushing back against the leader of a neighboring nation who declared that there is no such thing as Ukrainian culture, there is no such thing as the Ukrainian language, and there is no such thing as the Ukrainian nation. And so what we are doing in these podcasts and what these writers are doing in their work is they're proving just the opposite, that indeed there is a Ukrainian language, there is a Ukrainian culture, and there is a Ukrainian homeland. And it's a very important part of everything that I am doing in the worldwide Ukrainian play readings, and I'm thrilled to have you as part of it. There's another aspect of the story. I bring up Putin's comment about Ukraine because there is a character, so to speak, in this piece. The uncle from Moscow, who has, as we say in English, he's drunk the Kool-Aid. He has accepted the lies that Putin is told. And so, you have this, not only do you have one nation against another, you have Russia against Ukraine, but you actually do have families against families. And it's an added depth to this piece that makes it very, very poignant. I don't know if you have anything beside, to say to that, but I want to bring that up.
I think that's a very important point you make. And yes, this piece has as much to do with the complexity of family as it has to do with the reality of Ukrainian identity. So it's important that she mentions the uncle from Moscow. I think all of us, no matter which side of any issue we find ourselves, have uncles from Moscow. And we must somehow learn how not to kill them. We must keep open the possibility that there will be peace and that we will be able to speak. I have cousins, close cousins, and our political views couldn't be more different.
Right.
But we have, over the last few years, found a way to maintain the ties of family, whatever those are, mm-hmm. so that there's hope for the future.
Yeah. This actually leads into another phrase from the piece in which she writes that one needs love and humanity in these days of rage. The difference, I would say, and it is a horrendous, horrible, and monstrous difference, is that most likely in your dealings with your cousins, in my case, my dealings with a sibling with whom I do not agree politically at all, we are not in danger of being killed by them, and they are not in danger of being killed by us. Whereas the situation of the Ukrainians right now is that they're literally backs up against the wall, fighting back to survive as people, individuals, and as a nation.
Absolutely.
I was just going to say that phrase of hers is so loaded, actually. I can imagine writing a PhD dissertation about this. One needs love and humanity is the first part of the phrase. And the second part is in these days of rage, because it's rage, actually, that is that is what is the moving force right now for a Ukrainian author, for a Ukrainian person who is seeing their land overrun. It's a terrible, terrible dichotomy.
It is a terrible dichotomy, and what you hope is that you can fight the war without becoming the enemy. And I think that's the question. That's one of the things that she talks about, and one of the great issues that we're facing all over the world, that we can fight for justice in a just way.
Yeah.
And that we don't all become like abused children who so often become abusers themselves.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, that is indeed one of the problems in Ukraine, is so many, literally, children have become abused children, and then in metaphorical sense, older people too. It's a very difficult topic to talk about, not in the sense that my emotions overtake me, although they may do that at times, but it's a hard conversation to talk about in that many of the platitudes, I shouldn't say platitudes, many of the kind of the common phrases that we use to calm down conflict or to kind of slip by hostilities, many of those phrases don't quite work in the reality of the war that is going on in Ukraine right now. There is an overload there that kind of shoves everything out the window and changes the nature of everything that we are used to saying. And it's one of the reasons, I'll just say it again, in perhaps a slightly different way, that I find this particular piece so strong, because 70% of the piece is built on simplicity, love, attention to detail, the desire to see something grow, and that taking place within, the horror of the war is it's rather amazing, actually. It could have been a very angry piece. It's not.
No, but it's a true piece, because, as you say, it acknowledges the anger. And I keep thinking again about the way she talks about her Tatar grandmother, the way that if we continue in this way, if we don't find a way to behave justly after, then this will never end. Someone has to stop. But you can't talk about that in the middle of this. In the middle of this, people are fighting for their lives and their homes.
Yes, they are trapped. We are trapped in the confines of our language. They are trapped in the confines of their reality. It is a turning point in our contemporary civilization. That's for sure. Listen, Kathleen, I would love to go on with you forever, but we could go on forever, but there's other things to do in our lives. Let's move on to those. I'm thrilled that you were able to join us. Thank you so much for your comments. I look forward to hearing them on the air. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. I do have something wonderful has happened to me in the last week, and I wouldn't mind sharing it, which is that a film in which I play the lead called Familiar Touch is having its premiere at the Venice Film Festival.
Wonderful.
I'm very excited and find it difficult to believe.
Wonderful, wonderful. Congratulations. Thank you for joining us today, Kathleen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, John, so much for asking me to be part of this project.
My pleasure.
A Dictionary of Ukrainian Emotions.
Thank you for joining us for this, the 6th episode of our Dictionary of Ukrainian Emotions series of podcasts. In all, we are offering 9 texts written by founding members of the Theater of Playwrights in Kyiv, all of them published in English in the anthology titled A Dictionary of Emotions in a Time of War, 20 short works by Ukrainian playwrights. as does Iryna Harets' Planting an Apple Tree, which you have just listened to. Every one of these texts stands as proof of the power and resilience of the Ukrainian spirit, the riches of its culture, and the beauty of its language. Our next podcast will feature the American actress Jessica Hecht as she performs Flowering, a thoughtful and dreamlike piece by Olga Matsupa. Please join us for that. I am your host, John Friedman, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon.
A Dictionary of Ukrainian Emotions.